It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Canada national foil fencer, Eleanor Harvey. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get into professional fencing?
So I started fencing when I was 10, but before that, I was ever since I can remember, I was just obsessed with going to the Olympics for any sport. I didn't have cable growing up, so the only time that I got those bunny ears on TV that make the cable work was during the Olympics. So my mom would just only let me watch TV during the Olympics when I was growing up. So it was kind of the only thing I saw on TV, and I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. I want to find a way to make it there. So I thought originally maybe I would go for running because that's what my family was into. Then I started karate when I was 8. I wanted to go to the Olympics for karate, but I found out karate was not in the Olympics at the time. And so then someone suggested fencing, and I tried that, and I've been doing that for the last 16 years.
What was it like, obviously, getting into the sport of fencing?
Well, it was a bit difficult because in Canada, it's not the most popular sport. So it took a bit of digging to actually find a fencing club. When I found one, it was actually about 2 blocks away from my house in a random church basement. There happened to be a fencing club. So I just started going there and kind of started finding new clubs from there.
What was it like in 2015 going to the Pan American Games and winning gold in Toronto?
That's definitely one of my best memories in my sporting career because it was my first major games event as well. It was also all of my family and my friends were there, and it was also probably one of the biggest crowds that I've ever fenced in front of, and they were all cheering for us. So that was kind of a unique situation. Plus, we had never beat the States before. That was the first and only time that we've beat the States internationally. So winning gold in front of all them and with my team is one of the best memories that I look back on at my career so far.
What was it like, obviously, going to the home soil and playing on home soil in 2015?
It was it was completely different than anything I had experienced. Usually I'm in Europe or Asia or somewhere and there isn't a huge crowd, and if there is a crowd, they're not cheering for me. So it just felt much more, if at the beginning it kind of felt like more pressure, but as the day went on, I got more and more comfortable, and with the fencing with my team made it a lot better too. So it ended up being a huge advantage, I think.
How was it like, obviously, in 2013 going to the Junior World Championship?
In 2013, the World Championships, I think that was the first time that I had. I think that was the first year that I won a medal at the Junior World Championships. I got silver, and that was really surprising for me because the field was really strong, and I hadn't had a great season, honestly. I had a pretty rough season, and doing well there was by far the best result of my season. So that was super exciting.
What was it like in 2016 going to the Olympics for the first time?
Going to the Olympics in 2016 was my dream ever since I could remember. So it was definitely very surreal, but also super exciting and the highlight of my life at that point. it was kind of lonely because I was used to going to all the tournaments with my teammates, and I went to the Olympics like by myself. I was the only women's foilist there. But luckily we were able to bring my teammates to stay in the performance center, like outside of the village, so that I could still train with them, and they were still there to cheer me on when I fenced. So that was amazing.
What was it like, obviously, being in the Olympics and being in Rio, obviously, during that time in 2016?
Well, it was very nerve-wracking. I remember the first the like 2 days before I competed, I was just in a terrible mood. Like I was so nervous and I was so like irritable. Like I couldn't really interact with anyone because I was just like so nervous. Then I woke up the day of the competition and for some reason felt like I had just woken up as a completely different person than I had been the last couple of days. I was like super excited, in a good mood, and I ended up fencing really well. And I got the best, like the best result that a Canadian had ever done at the Olympics, which was 7th place. And I beat like the number 1 seed there, and was close to making it into the medal round. So it ended up going super well.
What was it like in 2019 going to the Pan American Games?
So that would have been the Pan Am Games in Lima, and that was my first time fencing individual at the Pan Am Games, because in 2015 I just fenced team. So that was pretty fun. I ended up winning the bronze medal there for individual, and then we won silver in team. And something funny about that Pan Am's too is that you're not allowed in fencing, you're only allowed to bring 3 people for each event, but usually in team you have a team of 4, because if someone gets injured, you have to have an alternate. So I ended up being the alternate for the women's saber team. So I kind of got to be a part of that day with them as well. I didn't fence because no one got injured, and that would have been terrible. Like I would not have been good because I don't fence saber, but it was fun to be like part of the team and be there when they won the bronze medal.
What are some of the similarities and differences between, obviously, fencing individually and fencing like as a team?
I guess the similarities are like that you're like if you have fenced with someone before, you can use probably some similar tactics, but the dynamics of the team event are totally different, because like I guess it depends on when during the bout it is. Like if it's at the beginning of the bout, there's a lot less pressure. But if you've been fencing for an hour and it's the anchor bout, there's a lot of pressure on the last bout. So it's more about like having a game plan and like trying to slowly like chip away at the lead and find little breaks where we can to like, oh, maybe we know that this person matches up with this person well, so we try to make sure that they fence at a good time that maybe they can expand the lead. So it's a lot more tactical in certain ways, but at the end of the day, it's just fencing. So whoever is the stronger person is usually going to win.
What is it like, obviously, getting to put on that your uniform and represent, obviously, Team Canada?
It's pretty it's pretty weird when I like actually reflect on that I like that I'm representing my entire country when I go to international tournaments, because like obviously not recently because of COVID, like there have been we didn't have a season last year and all that, but it becomes so run of the mill. It's like, oh, I have another tournament this weekend, flying all over the world. But lately, because there have been fewer tournaments, I've been able to reflect on that more and kind of realize the weight of of representing everyone in your country. And for me, I just remember and I think about all the little kids that are like maybe watching the live stream. And I've met people that said that they saw me at the 2016 Olympics and started fencing because of that. Like they saw me competing and they started, and now they've been fencing for a couple of years. And so that's like, I'm like, oh, I don't realize that anyone is watching or anyone's paying attention. So it's always shocking to think that Canadians are actually sometimes paying attention to what's happening. So it's really cool. It's exciting.
How does it feel, obviously, to know that Olympian is behind your last name?
Yeah, it feel like sometimes I think of it as for what it is. Usually, like since I've been to 2 Olympics, so I've been an Olympian for like 5.5 years at this point, and still sometimes it shocks me. I'm like, oh, I did that thing that I wanted to do, and I'm still doing that thing that I like doing, and um, like I'm trying to go hopefully to the next one as well. And so just doing it once was amazing and an honor for me and a dream come true. But I still have things to prove to myself. So yeah, I'm excited to keep going and hopefully one day be a 3-time Olympian.
What does a typical game day look like in fencing on the Olympic side?
Yeah, so the Olympics, the competition is a little bit different than like a normal World Cup, because at a World Cup, the tournament is over 2 days. There's usually like close to 200 people at a World Cup. So you need a couple days to like weed it down to the last couple people or whatever. Um, but at the Olympics, it's only like 40 people because it's so hard. It's much harder to qualify for the Olympics than for a World Cup. So it's like 40 of the best people in the world. So it's honestly a lot harder to like win a bout at the Olympics than it is to win a bout at a World Cup, just because it's so condensed. And at a World Cup, there's the first round, which is like the round robin on the first day, where you fence a group of 6 or 7 people to 5. Based on that, you're ranked, and then you try to qualify through to the next day by winning 1 or 2 direct elimination bouts, which are 15 hit bouts. At the Olympics, there's none of that. There's only 15 hit bouts. So you go in, if you win, you keep going. If you lose, you're done. Whereas at a World Cup, you at least have like that warm-up pool to like get into the competition. And if you lose a couple, it doesn't matter. You still get a chance to go on. So it's a bit different.
Of course, in the Olympics that you said about the 15 world, what is it like, obviously, competing in that and obviously knowing that if you mess up, obviously, that's the end of your Olympic time?
Yeah, it's a lot higher stakes. And especially knowing that like if you're at a World Cup, like fencers are watching you. If you're at the Olympics, your whole country, the whole world is watching you. So you're very aware that there are a lot more eyes on you than normal. And yeah, that's all going through your head as you're walking out, maybe as you're warming up. But for me, when the referee starts the bout, like there's nothing else. Like everything else is gone, and you're just fighting the person in front of you. And there's just not any room for those type of thoughts. And if those thoughts do get into your mind, that's a sign that maybe you're not as into the bout as you should be. And so you just have to like maybe like acknowledge that you're having those thoughts, but like be able to like redirect to what's happening, or else you're just going to get hit and it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, I can't lose. But now I'm thinking about how I can't lose, so I don't have room in my head to like think of how I'm going to hit that person. So yeah.
Of course, during the Olympic Village, what was it like, obviously, getting to meet those athletes that obviously you looked up to as kids?
Yeah, the Olympic Village is pretty wild experience because yeah, you see your idols there. Like even at the last Olympics, when I was by myself, I would see, past Olympic champions walking around, and you kind of it's easy to feel like you don't belong there. You're like, oh, like these are the best athletes in the world, and I'm just walking around with them, and they don't even know that I'm nothing. But you like, if you're there, like you deserve to be there. I think everyone has those moments of like kind of being in shock that they're in that company, I guess. But yeah, it's like it's really inspirational, and it's easier to like maybe believe that you can one day be like them if you're already like around them. So it's very inspirational.
What was it like, obviously, in this previous Olympics, obviously being the only person there and not having, obviously, your family there to support you?
Yeah, that was too bad. Of course, like it makes sense because of COVID that there couldn't be any spectators or anything, like, safety over everything, of course. But it's still disappointing for a lot of the athletes. Like for me, my mom and my baby cousin were gonna come to watch me and cheer me on. So that was too bad that they couldn't come. And especially for some people, if that was their only Olympics, that was their only chance for their parents or family or whatever to come watch. So like luckily, at least in Rio when I was there, all my family went. And so I did have that experience of having my family there to support me. The difference was at this Olympics, at least we did qualify a team. So I had my teammates there. So I wasn't completely by myself.
What are some of the things that you've learned now that you didn't know before, obviously getting into Olympics on the fencing side?
I think I had this idea that once I accomplished my goal of going to the Olympics, that everything would always be different for me after that. Like, oh, I have this goal, I accomplished it, gonna be different now. But life goes on, and you have to have new goals. And just because you did a thing doesn't mean your like problems are solved. So like it was definitely a learning experience of being like, okay, what now? And having to kind of reevaluate my goals and find a different source of motivation. And yeah, I'm more motivated than ever right now. So
What is it like, obviously, coming off of this Olympics, training for the next Olympics?
yeah, it's weird because it's like a short turnaround, just like the 3 years before the next one. I like recently, like about a year ago, I changed coaches. And so I only had like 9 months before the Olympics to work with him. So a lot of the things that we were working on like did end up coming out at the Olympics, but I'm really, really looking forward to the next couple of years of training with my new coach and developing my game more fully and seeing how much more of myself and what I work on with my coach can be reflected at the next Olympics. Having a little bit less time than usual is like makes the qualification a lot sooner. So the pressure is kind of on, but I'm just looking forward to being able to compete a lot more this year than the last couple of years.
What were some of your favorite memories and moments in this previous Olympics?
I think the moment of like walking into the village with my teammates was one of the best moments because we've been on the team together for so long. We're like family, and we had always wanted to go to the Olympics together. So making that happen as a team was like extremely satisfying and rewarding, and sharing that moment with them was so much better than going by myself in 2016 and just having myself to kind of like take in the moment. But at the Olympics, we also had a best ever result for foil, Canadian foil. We got 5th at the Olympics in team, which is like a really good result. And we lost our first bout against France, and it's really, really hard after you lose to be motivated for the next bout, especially knowing that we had 2 really hard bouts ahead of us with Hungary and Japan. And somehow, I think because of how much we care about each other, we were able to get like pumped and get amped for the next bout, and we like destroyed 2 teams that are really strong. And so those are definitely some of my best memories from this previous Olympics.
Who are some people that you look up to in the sport of fencing?
I really look up to, I mean, this is kind of an obvious answer, but the 2020, 2021 Olympic champion, Lee Kiefer. I've known her since I was a little kid. We kind of like grew up fencing together. And she's always been like really, really good. We fenced together at like NCAA tournaments because I went to Ohio State. So, and she went to Notre Dame. So we fenced all the time there. And we fenced at junior world championships, senior world championships. And I ended up fencing her at this Olympics and lost 15-13. And then she went on to win the whole tournament. But she's just like a really, really good sport. a really kind person, a really good role model for women and men, anyone in fencing. Yeah, I really look up to her.
Of course, can you talk about how, of course, your time at Ohio State has helped you into becoming an Olympian?
Yeah. The time training, I spent 5 years at Ohio State, fencing NCAAs and all that, while also being on the national team. So what I got out of Ohio State was a ton of volume against good fencers. Like we competed a lot, and the NCAA system is different than international fencing. Like the format of the competitions is very different. There's a lot of 5-hit bouts, just and it doesn't matter if you win or lose, you just have to keep fencing. Like literally you could lose 20 bouts in a row, you still have to fence 4 more bouts. So it really teaches you resilience, or it teaches you the opposite. Like it depends. You can take what you get out of NCAA fencing, what you can take from it. If you're able to find a way to recover from losses, it can teach you resilience. It could also teach you to just give up, and that's what you get from it. But I think the stronger, like the tough-minded people can find a way to really, really benefit from that system.
What was it like, obviously, balancing being an NCAA athlete, a fencing athlete at Ohio State, and also being an Olympian?
It was really, really hard. It was because it was also like, to be NCAA fencer, you or athlete at all, you still have to also be doing full-time. You have to be doing full-time studying. So you're a full-time student, plus you're traveling all the time for NCAA stuff. Plus you have your national team coach, which doesn't always communicate with your NCAA coach. So you have like, sometimes you have conflicting tournaments and you have to figure out which one you're going to go to. And most of the time you have to go to the NCAA one because you're like, for me, I was on a scholarship. I wouldn't have been able to afford to go to, to Ohio State if I wasn't on a scholarship. So I had to make sure my coach was happy with me, but he also knew my goals were bigger than NCAA. I wanted to go to the Olympics. So the head coach there at the time was like very supportive of those goals. He was a 6-time Olympic medalist himself. So he understood the importance of that. So it worked out that the year of 2016, I was able to go to NCAA championships. I won the title, and that season I also qualified for my first Olympics. So I owe a lot to the coaching staff there for like making it work for me and understanding the bigger picture.
What advice would you have college fencing athletes looking to obviously play in college?
I would say that like the thing that I learned like going through like managing school and fencing and competing was, you really, really have to like get your professors on your side, and like not in a manipulative way or anything, but just to go to them at the beginning of the semester, let them know, hi, I'm super excited to take your class. I'm also a college athlete. These are the days I'm going to be away. Please help me to succeed in your class. I don't want to like be a problem, but like these are the days I'm going to miss. Like, can you help me, like work with me to like make sure that I don't fall behind and that kind of thing. Because if you go at the beginning of the semester and explain that to them, they're like, oh, this person is on it. Like they care about my class. They're not just like there to be like, I'm an athlete, I don't care about school. And even if you're there, you're literally there just to be an athlete and whatever, you don't care about school, well, maybe one day your professor will be like, you're just telling me today that you're going to be away tomorrow for an exam. Well, you're screwed. You failed the exam then. I've had friends that's happened to. So yeah, just get ahead of it.
What are some of your future plans in your obviously fencing career?
Yeah, so like I'm getting ready to leave for Poland on Tuesday. So short term, I'm getting ready for the next World Cup, which will be on my birthday weekend, next weekend, like January 14th, 15th, 16th, I think. And so, yeah, I'm like getting ready for that right now. I'm going to try to qualify for the next Olympics, 2024. After that, I have no idea. Maybe I'll keep fencing. Maybe I'll like transition out of like professional fencing into coaching. I don't know. I know right now my goal is to do my best to qualify with my team for the next Olympics.
What advice would you give those Olympians looking to obviously compete for the first time or obviously multiple times like you have?
I think your first time can be really, really overwhelming. So I think like for me, staying connected to my friends at home was like really, really beneficial. Because your friends that maybe you grew up with or your close family, they've seen you through like, you know, from when you started your sport all the way to the Olympics. So they kind of know how big a deal it is for you. So like having the support of my friends and family from home when I was like actively staying connected to them, like leading up to my first Olympics, I think was like really grounding for me, made me feel less like terrified. And also just knowing that you're going to have some of the most extreme emotions that you've ever felt leading up to your competition. And it's easy to feel that and be like, oh no, like my Olympics are going to be terrible because I've never felt this way before. And I'm just like so emotional and I don't know what to do. Everyone goes through that before their first Olympics. And I think it was actually ended up being pretty helpful for my teammates this time. For 3 of them, it was their first Olympics and they had seen me at the last one. And so they knew what was coming for them. And so they were dealing with all their emotions, but they were like, Eleanor, like, at least we know that you were able to like compete well after going through all this. So it was kind of relaxing in a way because they knew that it would pass and they would get through it. And everyone did really well. So
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
So my Instagram, I'm not like super active, but I post about, you know, my fencing a little bit. It's Elamorg, so ELEAMORGUE. We also have a Canadian Women's Foil Fencing Instagram page. I think it's just called Canadian Women's Foil Fencing, where we kind of like update the results, kind of post about how we feel sometimes. So those 2 on Instagram are good, and Facebook too for the Canadian Women's Foil Fencing.
Thank you again, Eleanor Harvey, for your interview, and best of luck in your future in the Canadian National Foil Fencing.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Eleanor, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.